Hey everyone, my name is Seth. I am a multimedia and fiction assistant at the Spartanburg County Library. Today I'm going to be talking about 4 different books that are part of the fantasy genre, which is my favorite genre of literature.
I love reading fantasy novels because I find that escaping into a different world when the world around me is crazy and stressful helps me to relax and get away from it all. One reason that I loved these 4 fantasy books in particular was that not only did they give me a fun escape from reality, the characters and places depicted in each book highlighted several unique cultures that are present in our own world. By stressing the unique aspects of different cultures in their stories, these authors helped deepen the world of their books while teaching their readers a little about different cultures that are present in our own world. Before I talk about why I liked each of these books, I'll give a brief synopsis of the plot of each book to give you an idea of the environment and the story of the novels. My first pick is The City of Brass. The City of Brass begins in 18th century Cairo, Egypt, and the events of the book take place in several surrounding Middle Eastern areas. The protagonist of the book is a young girl named Nari, who is a con artist that is using her wits and deceptions to make a living. Although Nari has heard legends of powerful magical beings her whole life, she has never believed any of these stories. However, when one of her cons ends up with an encounter with a powerful jinn, her world is abruptly tipped upside down, and all she thought she knew is brought into question. There are a lot of reasons why I love this book, but one of the big reasons it appealed to me was how the author Chakraborty unfolds the plot. Instead of using Nari as the sole narrator, she uses another character named Alizad, who is a Jinn prince that is living in a city of Jinn. By reading from 2 drastically different perspectives, the world of the City of Brass becomes more complex and alive as the differences between the world Nari is familiar with collides with the world Alizad calls home. Not only that, but the motivations and passions of these characters clash when Nari eventually finds herself in the same city as Alizad. Another reason why I enjoyed this book was the way Chakraborty discussed the issues of class and racial segregation. She does this from the very first chapter that is narrated by Alizad, which reveals that within the city of Jinn, humans are treated as lower class citizens who are frequently enslaved and abused. By painting a picture of the horrors and injustices that racism creates, Chakraborty opens a discussion of issues that applies to our world today. Finally, and perhaps most of all, I enjoyed The City of Brass because of the environment and unique culture that the book captures. The best way I can think of describing the environment is that it feels like stepping into the movie Aladdin. However, instead of a funny, lovable genie like the one Disney portrays, the Jinn are completely different and complex individuals that can be kind, cruel, and everything else in between. Therefore, it gives a more realistic view into the fascinating Middle Eastern and Islamic folklore that Aladdin represents. As a result, this gives a better picture of that culture, and we see that through Chakraborty's The City of Brass. The City of Brass is also part of a trilogy, so if you read this book and like it, the sequel is called The Kingdom of Copper, and the final book of the trilogy is called The Empire of Gold. My second pick is Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. Spinning Silver takes place in a fictional kingdom called Livas that is loosely inspired by Russia, Poland, and Lithuania, in what appears to be the Middle Ages. The primary protagonist of the story is a young girl named Miriam, who is the daughter of a failed moneylender whose family is struggling to survive. In order to save her family, Miriam decides to take over her father's business. However, when she becomes wildly successful as a moneylender, she absent-mindedly makes the claim that she can turn silver into gold. When a powerful magical creature, known as a Stark, overhears her claim, he demands her to change the silver he brings her into gold. And if she is unable to change the silver into gold in 3 days' time, her life will be forfeit. Like with the City of Brass, one of my favorite things about this book was the multiple points of view. However, while the City of Brass only had 2 perspectives throughout the course of the book, Spinning Silver, there are 6 different character perspectives. While the changes of perspectives were at first confusing, once I got used to it, I found that having multiple character viewpoints enriched the story and gave me a better understanding of the author's world that I wouldn't have gotten with only one narrator. Yet, my favorite facet of Spinning Silver, like all the books here, was the environment and the culture that Naomi Novik brought to life. For instance, the weather in Spinning Silver was so well written that I felt like I could actually feel the cold of the snow and the winds that were described. Not only that, but Novik's descriptions of the uncaring attitude of several of the people in the town that Miriam and her family lived in, as well as the harsh demeanor of the stark creatures that threatened Miriam, matched the brutality of the weather perfectly. So perfectly, in fact, that it felt like it matched the word cold itself. And this further helped bring the world of Spinning Silver to life. The culture that is present throughout the course of Spinning Silver is another way that Novik brought the world of her book to life. By giving Miriam and her family a Jewish heritage, Novik gives her readers insight into Jewish customs, as well as a look at prejudices against the Jewish people. Having this culture present throughout the book both connects it to real-world issues and the rich heritage of the Jewish people, which created a reading experience that was much better than it would have been if the culture had been absent. Another interesting fact about this book is that it is a retelling of the fairy tale of Rumpelstiltskin, so you may spot several similarities throughout the story. Naomi Novik also wrote a retelling of the Beauty and the Beast fairy tale called Uprooted, so if you pick up Spinning Silver and like it, check out Uprooted as well. My third pick is The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden. The Bear and the Nightingale takes place in 14th century Russia, or Rus, as it is called in the book. The story is about a young girl named Vasilisa, or Vasya for short. Vasya is the daughter of a minor nobleman of Rus, whose province is in a somewhat secluded wood that is several days' ride from Moscow. Vasya is unlike any of her brother or sisters because she can see spirits, and knows that small offerings to the spirits help strengthen them and that they will in turn help protect her family from the harsh winters. However, when her father brings back a new wife from Moscow, who can also see the spirits, but instead views them as demons, Vasya's world begins to turn upside down, and the lives of her family, and the spirit she cares for are all at risk. Not only that, but little does Vasya know that behind this whole affair is a malicious spirit that is orchestrating the demise of all Vasya cares about. One of my favorite things about The Bear and the Nightingale is how well the atmosphere is written. In fact, whenever I picked up Katherine Arden's novel, it felt like I had just stepped into a cold, snowy woods filled with magical creatures. And speaking of the creatures, they were another reason why I loved this book so much. Since Arden's creatures were inspired by Russian folklore, they felt like they had much more substance and impact than the average creatures of a story, because of the history that is associated with them. Finally, and most of all, I enjoyed The Bear and the Nightingale because of Arden's dedication to portray the culture of 14th century Russia as accurately as possible. Arden studied Russian culture and spent a year in Moscow after finishing high school, and I believe those experiences really showed in her writing. For instance, instead of just using 14th century Russia as the setting of her book, she actually uses the history of that time to enrich and keep her story grounded in reality. She does this by incorporating events that were happening around that time, as well as actual historical figures, into the narrative of her book. For example, the Tsar of Russia in the book is based off an actual person that lived in the 14th century, and the shift from a pagan culture to the Russian Orthodox Church is also based off of Russian history. I found all of these small details fascinating, and I loved learning more about 14th century Russian culture and the folklore as I read Arden's story. If you read The Bear and the Nightingale and enjoy it, the book is also a part of a trilogy, so check out its continuation in The Girl in the Tower and its conclusion in The Winter of the Witch. My fourth and final pick is The Golem and the Genie by Helene Wecker. The Golem and the Genie takes place in New York City in 1899 at the peak of the immigration surge onto Ellis Island. The book opens in Poland with a sorcerer using dark magic to create a lifelike golem out of clay for another man to use as his wife. However, on a ship to New York City, this man dies, and the Golem ends up alone, stranded, and a foreigner to both New York City and the world of humanity in general. Yet luckily for her, a Jewish rabbi sees her, recognizes her for what she is, and takes her in and names her Chavra. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, in Little Syria, a Syrian tinsmith accidentally releases a genie as he is repairing an old copper kettle. Unsure of what to do with the ancient magical creature, the tinsmith names him Ahmad and hires him to help out in his shop, since the genie has a natural talent for working with metal and fire. Yet neither the golem nor the genie feels completely at home in a city filled with humans. So, when one day they run across each other, they immediately know that the other is not human and are drawn to each other. But at the same time, the evil sorcerer that created the golem finds out that his masterpiece is roaming free, and he begins a journey to New York City to claim his old creation. This sets up a showdown between a golem, a genie, and a wicked sorcerer. There are usually one or two things that I don't like about the books I read, even when I really enjoy them. Yet with Helen Wecker's The Golem and the Genie, this was very hard to find anything I didn't enjoy because I enjoy just about everything. One of my favorite things about the book was Wecker's style of writing. The Golem and the Genie completely sucked me in, yet at the same time, nothing in the story felt fast-paced or rushed. Everything seemed to happen at a very deliberate pace that felt like it fit perfectly with the atmosphere and setting of the story. Typically, I like books that are fast-paced, but this was one book that I'm glad didn't rush from one thing to the next, because the pacing of the story made the events and relationships in the book feel more grounded and realistic. However, like all of these books, my favorite facet of The Golem and the Genie was its inclusion and intention to different cultures. The thing that I liked about the way Wecker connected her book to these cultures was that instead of using the environments of the cultures, like setting the book in Syria, where the genie and the tinsmith were from, Wecker chose to put the characters of Jewish and Syrian heritage in a place that, outside of small communities, is otherwise completely devoid of these cultures, New York City. By placing her characters in New York, Wecker not only gives an accurate picture of America as a melting pot of different cultures, but she also gave her readers insight into the plights and experiences of the immigrants of these different cultures that were in America in the early 19th century. I found this weaving of historical events, different cultures, and fantasy absolutely riveting. If you check out and like The Golem and the Genie, I have good news and bad news. The bad news is that Helene Wecker has not written any other fantasy books. The good news is that she is currently working on a sequel to The Golem and the Genie that is expected to be published in 2021. So if you liked this book, be on the lookout for the Iron Season, which is supposed to continue the story that started in The Golem and the Genie.
Thank you all for stopping by and watching my program. Please check out our next staff pick program with Katie as she goes over some of her favorite television programs on September 25th. Thanks again. Bye.